In this video, we are going to continue working on the database application project. And so we're going to start a new project. So File, New, then Other, then JavaFX project. Click on Next. Give it a name. I'm going to call mine Database Query Project. And I'm just going to use the default location. Click Next. Don't need a module.info. For language, again, choose fxml. And then for the root component, I want an anchor pane. And I'm just going to call the fxml file database query. And the controller, I'm going to call it database query controller. All right, click on finish. All right, and what we're going to do is start working on the view part of the application, and that is with the fxml file. So right click on that and choose open with scene builder. All right, so I have this open in another window, and I want to show you what the application is supposed to look like. I have the complete version, so I'll just get a preview of it. All right, so there's what we want it to look like. In this window, we have basically a box to search for the last name, and you can see it has a label here, and then a text field, and then a search button. Okay, and then down here is a control called a table view. All right, and so what's going to happen here is that this application will be able to search the database. We'll type in a last name and click search, and then it will search the database for all users with all employees with the last name, whatever you've typed in here. And then it will display all the results in this table view below. Okay, so that's what the application is supposed to look like. All right, so let's start laying that out. First off, with this anchor pane here, there anchor pane, remember when you open it with Scene Builder, it you need to adjust the size on the anchor pane in order to be able to see it. It's there, right? But you just can't see it, and that's actually not the correct way. Again, I want 800 and then 600, like that. Okay. All right, and so next up, what I'm going to do is grab a Splitpane, which is up in the containers. So a Splitpane and a vertical one. Drag that in. You notice how it's little. It doesn't fill up the anchor pane. So what you want to do is right-click over here in the hierarchy panel and choose Fit to Parent. And then you can adjust this bar to be whatever you want it. Okay. So we want most of the application most of the table view to take up the application here. All right, and then in the top part of the Splitpane, that's where we have a label, a text field, and a button. So what we're going to do is grab an H box and put it into the top of that Splitpane. You can see when I do that, it adds an anchor pane in the top and puts the H box inside of an anchor pane. Again, it's really tiny. It doesn't fill up the whole box, and so what we want is, again, to fit it to the parent in there. So right click on the H box, fit the parent, and then it will take up the whole space. All right, and then inside there, what we want inside that H box up in the top, we want a label, so drag that in there. We want a text field that the user can type a last name in. And we want a button. so that button's right here. And remember, the H box lays everything out in a horizontal row like so. Okay, we don't really want it all crammed up in the upper left-hand corner, right? So what we're going to do is click on the H box over here in the hierarchy pane, and then go to Properties. And then under Alignment, what we want is Center. So we want that stuff in the center, so that looks better. It's still all kind of jammed together in there. So what we want to do to fix that is go down here, make sure that the H box is selected, and go down here under a layout, and then for spacing, choose 20 or some appropriate number there. So you can see that spreads that out a little bit. All right, so that looks good so far. Let's go ahead and adjust the properties on the label. For the label, all we need to do is to change the text to say last name. Under the text field, what we want to do is two things, right? To give it an FX ID, all right? And for that FX ID, I'm just going to choose last name. And for the on action, handle last name box. So that will be the name of the method, right, that handles the event that is generated when a user is in the text field and presses the enter key button. All right, and then for the button, same thing. We want to change the text to search. And then for an FX ID and an event handler, so for FX ID we want search button. For the on action, I'm just going to call it handle search button, like so. Okay. All right, so that looks pretty good for the top. That looks pretty close. What we want to do next is work on the bottom part. In the bottom part, we want a text, a table view. Okay, so under controls, find table view, and then drag that in. All right, again, you can see it's little inside of the bottom pane. We don't want that. So right click on table view over in the hierarchy panel, and then choose fit to parent. And that stretches it back out. So that looks good. All right, next then what we want is for the table view, we want to give it an FX ID, table view is what I'm going to call mine, and that is it on that one. All right, and so we have two columns here, and those are our table columns. What we want, you can see there's two of those. What we want are four columns, one for the ID, one for the last name, one for the first name, and one for the email. So what we'll need to do is to add two more table columns. So just drag those down to the table view. Same thing, do another one. Oops, wrong one, table column. And you'll see you'll have column Y here. So now, then what we'll do on each of these columns then is we adjust the text, and that's under properties. So that will be the text displayed at the top of the column here. And also for each of these columns, we're going to have to give it an FX ID. And so let me make sure that, so this one I'm going to call it ID column. This one is last name, so under the properties I'm going to put just last. Under the FX ID for the last name column, I'm going to call it last name column. Change this one from column X to first. And give it an FX ID first name column. All right, and in the last column, the text I want up at the top is email. And then I need to give the column an FX ID so I can refer to it from our program, and I'm going to give it the name email column, like so. All right, so that's looking pretty good. The only thing is that these columns are not, don't take up the whole space, so we want to fix that, and we can just stretch these out to the desired lengths right here, like so. And that looks pretty good. Let's take a look at the preview. So that's what it looks like. If I resize, everything resizes pretty nicely. I can adjust these columns how I want to. So all of that looks pretty good. Okay. All right. So far, so good on that one. All right, so I'm going to save that. Then I am going to go to View, Show Sample Controller Skeleton. Click on that. And I'm going to copy that. And I'm going to go over and paste that into my controller file, database query controller. All right, you're going to see there's lots of errors there, but we are going to straighten that out, most of it in the next. Actually, that looks okay. It was because I forgot to select all and then paste. So the one thing I'm going to do here is, again, hover over this, and we have to import action event from javafx.event. Remember, there are two, so make sure you import it from the right one. Okay. All right, and let's just test that out. I'm going to go here and open up main. I'm going to save that one first. Let's see, there might be some problems. Okay, I'm going to save that one first, and then I'm going to run. I'm going to run main. So open up main and then do run as Java application, and we'll see if that loads up. It may not, because there's lots of things that are missing in there. Okay, it gave me this again, just sort of a blank screen. So what I'm going to do is quit out of Scene Builder and then open it up again. All right, everything looks okay there. And then run it. All right, and for whatever reason, I'm not really sure why it does that, but you usually have to open up Scene Builder and close it back out. That looks good so far. The one thing is I want this 600 by 800 to start off with. You can see that I have it as 400 here, 400 here. So if I change that to 800, 600, that should be the same as the size that we set in Scene Builder. So all right, so there we go. That's up and running. I want to set the title, right? So let's do that. try that, make sure it works. Okay, so everything's up and running, and we have our view, all right, and so that looks pretty good. Okay, and so in the next video, then we are going to start working on the other parts of the application, the controller, and the model.